medieval harpers and all the way to the end of the tradition in the 18th century, written music was not relevant to them at all. But of course it's extremely relevant to us because that tradition died out. So it's wonderful that it got written down. But they would have learnt in an oral tradition from one to the other, over generations.
It was an oral tradition, so the songs, the tunes, the melodies survived among the musicians. But we're very fortunate the Irland pipers maintained the repertoire of the old Irish harpers. To this day, we share quite a lot in terms of the spareness of how we arrange the music of the old harpers. We have so many of the melodies, but the pipers' very beautiful, restrained way of developing a sort of variation and ornamentation and the spareness of chords have contributed a lot to giving us a hint and an idea of how to rearrange this material.
Dála mé bhuain mo bhamódam an teanmhó gaelach gan faice bheith scrífa síos, mo chlós is éisteach na glós a dhéana sé, agus dála mé stan na PC ceoil clasica a chumá, so bhí an dála agam sa bhí an tálam, ach an stíl tradiisiúnta ná chuirte ó go glóin, just le bheith éisteacht agus a dhéanamh agus a feire agus a cleachta arís an teanmhó gaelach. Agus bin mar dála mission chuid is mó an ceol gaelach cinnte. Súan trí atá, agus seo ceann a bhuain mo hana bháthir dom, agus do mo bháthir, agus do gachtaine. Is áranna se hatá going le tríú cheir glóin, agus bíonn se fuair an dáin agam, agus méadál timppla an dáin bíonn se a chana agam do riine chudaoine a chola timppla an dáin le seo.
I think learning by ear is an absolutely fantastic asset to any musician. I think classical musicians are wildly jealous of the Irish musicians who can actually just sit down, hear the tune, play it. It's a little bit more complicated with the harp because we have treble and bass clef. But it's fantastic that the students can just go to a session and feel comfortable. They can play the tune, but they can also accompany and not play the tune at all. 1, 2. Very good. Next bit is. So 5 notes down, fingering, what would you use?
3 and 2.
3 and 2 or 2 and 3, either, yeah. So from E to 3. Okay, and all of that phrase, 1, 2.
The harp at an Irish court had immensely high status. Obviously the rí, or the king, is the most important person at a medieval court. The next most important person is the file, or poet. But the third most important person at the court is a musician, which is astonishing. He's right there at the centre of the artistry and the music making and the creativity of the Gaelic aristocracy. It's really interesting to think about what the gender balance was between harpers. So in the medieval period, we tend to hear more about male harpers. So this tends to be a male tradition. And it's really in the 19th century that the harp gains this sort of female persona. And I think that's because of Marie Antoinette and the nice ladies playing their pedal harps in the late 18th century in France. But at the medieval period, it's quite male. But by the time we get to the 18th century, at the 17th and 18th century, of course, we hear of women who are playing and teaching and performing. So the most famous player in Belfast in 1792 at the last gathering of the harpers who played this instrument, the oldest and most interesting player was a man called Denis O'Hampsey. And his teacher was Bridget O'Callaghan, who was a woman.
And early 19th centuries, there were a lot of touring musicians coming from Britain and the continent over to Dublin and travelling around and performing at concerts throughout Ireland. And they brought with them the popular contemporary music. So their musical tastes really were changing. Patriotic figures in particular saw the Irish harp and they were immensely proud of its tradition. And they wanted to update or modernise the instrument.
When I arrived in Northern Ireland, it was the emblem of the authority in Northern Ireland because every policeman wore it on his cap and on his pips and on his collar. And so it was a very confusing emblem, and it is still the harp in the corner of the Royal Standard, signifying the Irish element in the British realm. I'm proud of that, and I think it's an opportunity for us still to build bridges because things are not comfortable now.
The harp tradition at the moment is at its strongest for more than 300 years, so it's absolutely fantastically strong. There are great innovations happening within traditional music, but there's so much more room to explore. And the young people are only beginning. The future is bright.
I play with a couple of different groups, the trad orchestra at home and again in the ensemble in college, so it's good fun to try out different combinations of instruments and see what you can do with the harp in terms of accompaniment and melody, and there's a huge scope for kind of exploring different things.
Like I love the messing around with unusual instruments. Great to bring the harp into a new context. People get kind of a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
they don't expect it, but it works so well.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole evolution of it as well. Like, it doesn't have to just be what people kind of stereotype it as. It's like, oh, it's that lovely instrument, so it is so angelic. Yeah. Like, even that tune
Harp
itself.
Harp is for life, not just for Paddy's Day.